Well, Rachel asked me to do an introduction, but you pretty much all know who I am and what I do. But just for Andrea, I'm just going to do a very, very quick bio. Good morning there, Teresa. My name's Michelle Zelli, and I've been a coach for about 20 years. I coach everything from presidents through to the lady down the road. So I've got a really wide range of what I do, everything from emotional to business through to spiritual. I mean, really, the strap line, if I was marketing, would be I've got 1 foot in the boardroom and 1 foot around the shamanic campfire, and that kind of describes it. So why am I here? There's a lot of people that are struggling a bit now. I mean, we're 6 weeks into lockdown. We're a couple of months into COVID, and we're starting to realize that normal is changing. There's not going to be back to normal. And some of us, what we did, put our blinkers on and hope or pray that we're going to go back to normal. The problem with that is the unconscious mind, and that's the bit that runs the show, 95%. Good morning, Tina and Zoe. At the back of the head here. Your unconscious mind knows that normal isn't coming again. And therefore, what will happen if you put those blinkers on is that the anxiety or the emotions that you're not processing will get bigger and louder, and they will bang on your door until you open it. So a lot of people are suffering from anxiety. They think that's fear. It's not necessarily fear. It is your body letting you know that whatever you're doing isn't working. And so I really want to talk today about what a miraculous, absolutely incredible brain and body and spirit you have, and how you might want to take some steps to align the three. So when your head, your heart, and your gut are in alignment, we call it congruence. And when you are congruent, what happens is that you are comfortable in your skin, you feel like you could walk on water, and nothing much gets to you. But we can't go out and do our normal distractions at the moment. Although I've got to say, I know that Miriam's on the same page, and I think Sarah too. We've had a damn good go with our shopping habits. Sweaty Betty shares went up this week, I think. But if we can't go out, we can go inside. And we're being gifted by the universe the most incredible opportunity to go deeper inside and get to know ourselves. Because self-mastery is where life mastery starts. We can't possibly master life if we haven't mastered ourselves. And we are emotional and spiritual creatures in a physical body. So your body will manifest the energy that you're not processing. So most illnesses, most sickness, most body damage is as a result of constantly repressed emotions. And now is a time where it's getting more difficult to repress emotions because, as I say, you haven't got your normal distractions. Now, I know some of you are doing your very best to distract yourself by planning the future and organizing God knows what. But I've got to be straight with you and tell you it's fantasy. And the damage that you are likely to do doing that is quite high, because remember the unconscious mind at the back here that runs 95% of the show, it will force you to face yourself. And if you run away from it, it will have to bring something bigger and bolder and unfortunately less comfortable in order for you to pay attention. Now that could come in the way of a life event, or it could come away in a health issue. But as I say, we're being given this opportunity to dig deep and find out who we really are. And we are a bundle of emotions. We are spiritual beings in physical bodies, and the physical body is the density. So any of you, we've got a doctor here, so I've got to be on my best behavior. Any of you that are familiar with quantum physics know that density and speed of atoms is what creates the form. And that's all we are. We're billions of atoms created in it is a magnificent human form being forced. Actually, I wasn't going to use the word forced, but we are being forced now to express ourselves in our human form, however we want to do that. And every one of you, that's going to be slightly different. You might be feeling creative, you might be feeling miserable, you might be feeling angry, but please don't judge whatever you're feeling. I had a massive meltdown last week, and because it's such an intimate setting, I've chosen to share a little bit of it with you, because sometimes when I'm able to be conscious of something that happens to me, I'm able to share it and to show you in the third person how the power of this stuff works. So for those of you who don't know, and forgive me for repeating myself for those that you do, I had a pretty shitty childhood. I was adopted. My mother was the youngest Playboy bunny mother, very glamorous. My father was a prize fighter and a bad boy. It was an incredibly passionate relationship, but clearly also a destructive one. They were both addicts, not drugs, but booze and gambling. And I suspect love and sex thrown in, but that wasn't acknowledged in those days. And I was then adopted within the family system, and it was a broken family system. So unfortunately, I was neglected and abused throughout my childhood as well. And I didn't really have a childhood. Now, one of the things that I've never acknowledged is that my birthdays were never celebrated. I'd never had a party, and I still find it hard to talk about that. But my birthdays were used as an opportunity to make it very clear that my birth into this world was nothing to celebrate. And if I was lucky, Nana and Grandad would be invited for a cup of tea and a piece of cake, and then the dialogue would start how awful it was that I was born. So you can understand that I've got a very traumatized, actually, relationship with birthdays. Well, last week it was a birthday in lockdown, and that really screwed me, because the way that I've been able to not face that truth about my history was that since the age of 14, my birthdays have been pretty much a month of sex, drugs, rock and roll when I was younger. And as I've got older, amazing friends and travels and parties and dinners and lunches. And, you know, I've really gone over the top. But this year I couldn't do that. I couldn't drown out that underlying pain and trauma. Now, as luck would have it, on the night before my birthday, my son called and said, "It's your birthday tomorrow," yeah? And it turned out it was very clear that my family had arranged nothing. I started crying at 7 o'clock in the evening. I stopped crying at 2 in the morning when I fell asleep. And when I say crying, I mean it was like a howl. And I started again when I woke up on my birthday. Nothing would console me. I went over, I live on the beach, so I went over to the beach and I had a paddle because I was seeing the girls at lunchtime for a quick Zoom. And I thought it'll stop me crying, cold seawater up to my knees. And I put my phone on the rock behind a bag, and it leapt off over the bag into the sea. Now, this is a girl that hates cold water, but I suddenly turned into Flipper. Boom, in I went. I just didn't think anything of it whatsoever. This is my phone, this is my lifeline. And now I'm on my knees in the sea, up to my neck. You know how the tide goes and the sand swells. I'd lost it. Funnily enough, caught it, lost it again, caught it again, got it out, ran back for the Zoom lunch. And by this time, of course, I was late. My phone had died a death. No amount of CPR was going to change that. So now I have no phone. I have swollen red eyes. I am pretty much inconsolable and ripped open. And I just sort of hold it together for an hour with the girls. And I then I had the foresight to take a couple of days off after my birthday. Now, this is where it gets really clever. Why did I take 3 days off for my birthday? I'm not going anywhere. We're in lockdown and I've got clients coming out of my ears. What made me do that? A higher power. Those of you that work with the universe or Jesus or God or a cat on the moon eating cheese, whatever your higher power is, it's really trying to communicate at the moment and guide us to do what we need to do to purge the very, very deepest emotions. And those deep emotions are what's called low vibration. You remember I talked about density? Now, low vibration emotions like pain, hatred, bitterness, resentment, fear, rage, what they do is they block out the connection with the universe. They block out that guidance. So in other words, what's happening is we're going around like this. We've literally got our earplugs in. We can't hear the wisdom and the healing that's coming. But I do a lot of work with the universe and I chat with her daily. And those of you that know me well know that my life is pretty incredible. That doesn't mean it's perfect, but things just fall into place for me. And I believe it's because I do the work and it's the work I teach clients. So I know that when I purge, when you purge low vibration emotion, you will have the deepest healing that is possible. So I hear you ask me, well, okay, Michelle, I get really angry, but I'm not getting any better. Why? Because that's what you were going to ask me, wasn't it? Yeah. And I'm going to tell you, it's a very, very simple explanation. When we are not conscious and an emotion comes up that is uncomfortable, the first thing we try and do, most of us, is to not feel it. Okay, we shop it, we eat it, we drink it, we drug it, we shag it into submission. That's on a good day. Okay. But the reality is that if we don't allow ourselves to feel it, we can't heal it. And the unconscious mind, it tries really hard to protect us from anything that's uncomfortable. So when I'm asking you to go into whatever feeling is coming up for you and just welcome it, however awful that feeling is, surrender into it. Because you think about it, when you reach out for a glass of vodka or a glass of wine or a shopping at Net-a-Porter or overdoing the exercise or whatever it is, what you're actually doing is trying to change how you feel. Okay? Everything a human does is designed to get you to feel or not feel something. I really want you, I know a lot of you know this, but what I'm doing today, I hope, is to bring some of the remembering, taking some from the unconscious into the conscious. So when you feel the stirrings of discomfort and you sit in it, what you're going to do is you're going to allow some sediment, okay? Mine was from 40, 50 years ago to come up, okay? Now, I had such deep grief, it sounded like a tortured wolf. And by the way, this crying went on from the Tuesday night through to the Saturday morning. It was pretty relentless. Now, what is the difference between using that to heal and just releasing? Okay, so some of you will know that you get depressed or you get angry or that you get resentful, but it keeps coming back. This is the trick. You must never, and I mean never, if you want to heal, project it on something. So I could have said, oh, it was my son that made me so sad, heartbroken actually, and I could have focused on his behavior. Now, all I'm doing there is I'm projecting the emotion and I am not allowing it to process through my body. by allowing, just allowing that grief to show itself and come out of me, and just keep on just self-soothing with hot baths and lovely cashmere blankets and whatever makes you feel cozy but not distracted. And did you notice that the universe took away my main tool for distraction? That's not coincidence. I have never ever lost my phone. My phone is, it is glued to me. And what you will find is if you set the intention to do this work, the universe will collude. Now, when I call it universe, you call it whatever you like. I'm not here to preach any particular belief system as far as your spirituality goes. So every time you set an intention, there will be a collusion. But a lot of people don't realize that something that feels crap is a gift. That conversation with my son that broke my heart open was the biggest birthday gift I could have had. For 4 days, as I say, I cried pretty much. I'd had very, very little distraction. I didn't project it. And when I came out of it on Saturday evenings, Sunday morning, by the way, I watch a little bit of TV, but I choose it very carefully. I watch things like Hubble videos, Hubble's the Universe Telescope. I watch Afterlife because it's really gentle, funny, and emotional. So to help me bring up, so if you imagine that you've got an emotional fur ball, okay, and you've got it right deep in your gut, shush. She's just seen a bicycle go by. Sorry, it's my dog. Okay, you've got a fur ball deep in your gut. And if you've ever seen a cat try and retch out a fur ball, it's hard work. That's exactly how your stuck emotions are. And the older they are and the denser they are, the deeper they are. And the harder it is to get to them. So you might think, well, why did you go through 3 or 4 days of absolute self-torture? That's crazy, Michelle. You could have drunk or drugged it or done whatever you needed to do to stop it. Well, I'll tell you why. I've worked for 20 years to get that fur ball up, but I didn't know it was there. I knew something was there, but I didn't know what it was. And the process may not be pretty or happy la, but by Sunday morning, not only did I feel amazing, the sessions I've had this week with clients have gone to another level. They have been they've just been incredible. I've had 3 VIP clients come through this week. You know, coaches aren't doing anything. I mean, most coaches are pretty much redundant at the moment. And the reason I'm sharing this with you is not I want to convey the magic that's on the other side of doing the work, the why to do the work. Sure, you can distract yourself, but if you do that and you waste this time, you will never ever get another opportunity to have this period to deep dive and heal yourself. And what's coming next is going to want you at the highest possible vibe, because what's coming next is pretty tough. You know, we're heading towards an economic, emotional, and spiritual change in our way, in our order, and we're going to need to be able to adapt to that mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So this is like training. This is like preparing yourself to be extraordinary. How are we doing, guys? Give me a sign. Does this resonate with you?
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you know, whatever you don't purge will show up for you, physically or emotionally or in your life. There's no getting away from it. We are spiritual beings in a dense body. We are being forced to raise our vibration. And this period won't be called COVID. This period won't be called the lockdown. This period in history, when we look back, when I'm dead and gone, will be called the Great Awakening. And it's really exciting. And I invite you to come to the party. Don't stand outside queuing. Get your VIP tickets. This is the most extraordinary time to be alive. And we can focus on what we don't know. We can focus on all the low vibe. You know, and I was speaking to Andrea before we came on live and talking about is it Bolsonaro you pronounce him? Yeah. The president of Brazil, you know, who's in, I mean, he's corrupt. He's being, I mean, they're trying to get rid of him. And, you know, he is a typical example. You're watching the leaders of pretty much every country falling. You're watching the institutions that we know shatter. You know, this week, Lloyd's Bank, for instance, had a 95% reduction in their profits. And there's a profit warning saying, like, if you bank with Lloyd's, make sure you don't have your maximum investment. They could go down. Now, what I'm saying to you is, this is the end of the old order, which means we need to change the way that we interact with the world. And what a great time to change our minds, our bodies, get fit spiritually, emotionally, and purge that low vibration. So I was talking about my meltdown, and one of the sayings that you may know me for is a breakdown is a breakthrough. When you melt down, please don't judge it badly. This is your crack. This is where the light comes in. And what happened to me was that in my heart chakra, the center of my chest, I was shown a volcanic rock, and it was literally a triangle, and it was as clear as crystal. And as I grieved, it cracked open, and behind it was light, and it was just a hairline crack. And at that point, I remembered a saying from the Sufi poet Rumi. He's never been one of my favorites. Why it came to mind is nothing short of a miracle again. And he's always said that the wound is where the light comes in. And for the first time in my life, I knew I was that statement. And as the light, and it was like a fire, it was just a hairline crack, remember? And it opened just this much. And every day it's opened maybe just a few millimeters more. And I'm sharing this because these are the sort of things that you will be given to show you, not only are you on the right path, but how to move forward. The universe, your unconscious mind, they collude and they show you these signs consistently. So when you lose your phone, or your phone gets nicked or falls in the sea, or whatever happens, think about why you might need to take time off of distraction. What is it really saying? There's no such thing as a coincidence. Everything happens for a reason. And the world is full of miracles. But if you're stuck in third dimension, which is density, you can't explore. The miracles can't come. Now, I have been away with 3 of the people here on today, Rachel, Miriam, many times with Miriam and Ashley, and they will acknowledge that shit just happens to me. You know, it's unbelievable. I was standing outside my garden path, and a client walked up, and it was Ollie Dudley. Some of you might know him. And he said, "What are you doing, Zelli?" He said, "Why are you standing at the end of the garden, end of the path? Why?" I said, "I'm looking for a gardener." He said, "Well, why don't you use Google like everybody else?" I said, "I don't need to." And he laughed. He thought I was taking the mickey. And we looked round, and there was a man with shears and a gardening van appeared out of nowhere. And that might sound impossible, but I promise you that when you connect with the universe, whatever you focus on, you pull towards you. Now, that sounds pretty good, but remember there is a reverse to that. If you focus on feeling out of control, fear, anxiety, the shit that's going down on Facebook. I mean, I'm currently removing 95% of the people posting fake news. I mean, it's just absolutely crazy. But what's happening is people are getting scared, and so their egos are taking over. And when the ego takes over, they have to know, okay? So we go into a spiral of needing to know. And if we can't make sense of what is our reality, we create an altered reality. And there we have some of these crazy conspiracy theories, which aren't helping anybody, by the way. There is no evidence, but what it's doing is the people that are propagating them are in ego. So it's making them feel important and strong. Does that make sense? So just really think about what you're focusing on, because whatever you focus on, you are bringing more of it into your life. Okay. And last week, I intentionally focused on the grief and the heartbreak. Why would I do that? Because I wanted to get it out. Remember that fur ball that I've worked 20 years to dig that deep? Now, this is where it gets a little bit weird, if it's not weird enough for you already. So when the emotion comes to the surface, whatever the emotion is, don't judge it. One of the most harmful things we do to retard our healing and our ascension is we feel something and we judge it. Either we judge ourselves for feeling it. Oh, for God's sake, Michelle, you've been doing this work for 20 years. How can you still be grieving? That's something I used to say to myself. Whatever your story is about that, I want you to stop it right now. Because the gift of the emotion coming up is for you to look at it, and I want you to imagine it's got a thread attached to the younger you, an invisible thread. It's almost like a fishing line. And I want you to use it to go back to the first time you remember feeling that feeling, okay? Just nod if you're with me. Sasha? Yeah? Andrea, am I making sense to you? Yeah? Good. Now, what happened to me was I used that thread, and when I went back to the younger me, that younger me was lifeless, maybe 9 years old, in her bedroom, breathing. She was alive, but she wasn't living. She was alive, but she wasn't living. They'd sucked the life out of her. It was heartbreaking. And I sat on her bed for 24 hours and I stroked her hair. And it was one of the most profound healings I've ever had. Now, I've worked with Tony Robbins. I've worked with Oprah Winfrey's therapist. I've worked all around the world with the best of the best. Over the years, I've spent nearly or probably more now, £500,000 on that training and upgrading. And to be able to tell you that I was there on my Jack Jones, creating a sanctuary and a healing of that depth fills me with absolute joy, because if I can do it, that means I can teach you to do it. So we've now got me on the bed, sitting next to her. She's lifeless, she's breathing, but she's done in. She doesn't want to live, she's just waiting to die. Stroking her hair. There was nothing I could say to her at this stage because she wasn't able to receive. She was too broken. Eventually, after stroking her hair, and when I say 24 hours, I did sleep in between, she started to move, and I was able to start to comfort her and reassure her. And this is a really important part. You must go back to that younger you as your most compassionate, and you must give her your time. When I work with people or with their inner child, most people rush in and rush out. They have a chat with her, don't give her a chance to talk back or come alive, and it's a 10-minute cut and dash. Your younger you deserves more than that. Give yourself a couple of days, clear your schedule. You're never going to have an opportunity like this. And what you're seeing, as I said to you earlier, is such a change in the world order, which means the vibration of the planet, that you have an opportunity now that you may never ever have again. It's quite extraordinary what's coming up for my clients. It's just unbelievable the depth we're going to. So once I've been able to, if you like, breathe life back into her, I was able then to reassure her that their behavior was nothing about her. They are mentally damaged, and unfortunately, she was just collateral in their story. And over the following 24 so then 48 hours, I was able to reassure her and show her the life we have now. And she didn't believe it. She did not believe how lovely my life is and her life is, because how could it be? How could it possibly go from that to this? A little bit more reassurance and love, and I was able to get to pack her a case and get her out of there. And she now resides with me at Moonstone, and we're doing really well, really well. And as I say, the benefits are that I've purged a huge furball of low vibration toot. And I've talked about grief, but of course there's rage. Underneath most grief, there's rage. But as children, we were rarely shown how to deal with that rage. So we push it down. Rage can look ugly. So I'm helping her work through that at the moment. And it's amazing. And it might sound a little bit scary to you. I was terrified. Having done more processes than most people have had hot dinners, I was still absolutely terrified, because you're going into a place that is painful and you don't know what's there, okay? So intuitively, you're going to want to move away. But I promise you, your unconscious mind will never give you more than you can handle, okay? And we can't create anything either. Whatever's coming up for you is there. This isn't creating it. COVID is not creating anything you're experiencing. What's in you is now coming up, okay? I want to talk a little bit about overreactions as well, because in this period, we're finding a lot of emotions are heightened, magnified. Now, there's a phrase that I use, and that phrase is, if it's hysterical, it's historical, okay? Now, what does that mean? So let's just bring it back down into third dimension. If I break a nail and I throw myself on the floor screaming, would you agree it's an overreaction? Yeah? Now, we've got a scale of 0 to 10, okay, on our reactions. Now, if a loved one dies and I throw myself on the floor crying, that's probably not an overreaction, but it's still a 10 response. So if we overreact, okay, in other words, if it's hysterical, what it is, it's a past wound that we're operating out of. So if we overreact, if it's hysterical, it's historical, okay? So I knew when I was inconsolable after that conversation with my son, this wasn't about today. I knew straight away I'd ripped open a very, very deep historical wound. And as I say, when you rip open a historical wound, don't just try and plaster over it. That is the gold. That is absolute solid gold. If you've got any questions, guys, anything at all that's not making sense, or if something's going on for you that you want life coaching with, I'm right here to help you, whatever it is. I also thought about the prophets, and again, this is nothing to do with religion, whether you think about Buddha or Jesus, or I think even Gandhi, any of the people that we consider to be spiritually elevated, every single one of them had time in the wilderness. Have you ever thought about that? Now, they didn't have a smart TV. They didn't have an iPhone or an iPad when their wilderness was real wilderness. In other words, they took themselves off to somewhere where there was no external extraction and they had to face themselves at the deepest level. It's not coincidence that every single one of them did that. That's happening. That happened because that is what's required for an ascension. And those of you that are serious about your emotional, your spiritual, your upgrading, please put yourself into a couple of days of wilderness. See who you really are without those distractions. You might be absolutely surprised and also honor whatever comes up for you. Okay? Ask yourself, how much time are you spending being fully present? Because if you're not present, you have no idea who you are. You can't have. All you're doing is running away from a feeling that you don't want to feel. You're running away from a trauma, a wound that is trying to get your attention. And the more you run, the louder it's going to shout. And I've done this work now for 20 years. I eat, breathe, and sleep it myself. And I work with phenomenal clients from all over the world. I'm said to be the highest paid coach in Europe. And I don't say that to impress you. I say it to impress upon you that I work with people that can afford the absolute best. And they're nobody's fools. They're bloody demanding. And so they should be. And I guarantee from the first session, there will be significant change. If not, I don't charge you. I don't charge them. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is I want you to understand the value of this work. There's so many people out there sharing their wisdom. And I've been in the industry a long time. And at least 80% of them don't do the work. There are millionaire coaches that can't afford a bus ride. There's love addiction coaches that are getting beaten up at night. There's so much disintegrity out there. Please don't get trapped in all of that. You've got the power to do this. And with the steps that I've given you and the visualization that I've shared, I hope it's going to inspire you to go deeper and be braver, to discover your ascended self. What does ascended mean? You know, when you think about Christ's ascension, Buddha's ascension, what it is, it's where we rise above the earthly suffering. Because you know what? We can either suffer, accept, or change it. And at the moment, we can't change what's going on outside. So we've got to accept it and start to look at what's going on inside for us. And, you know, I hope that I'm a great advert for that, you know, despite the fact that I'm always honest. I wear my heart on my sleeve. You know, this is not a path for the ordinary or the scared. This is a warrior pathway that has a magnificent gifts. And I really hope that I've inspired you today to go a little bit deeper, be a little bit braver. And if you don't do it for you, do it for your kids. Don't pass the wounding on to your kids, because we know that wounding goes down at least 7 generations. And we're the first generation to have this wisdom on tap. We've got no excuse. You know, I can forgive my parents because they just didn't have this stuff. But my kids shouldn't forgive me if I pass it on to them. It's my obligation to help them heal and to heal that generational pattern and dance. So let me just, you can see I did make some notes. So that's pretty much what I wanted to share with you. I hope, as I say, that it has inspired you, that wherever you felt triggered there, okay? And this is wherever you felt a bit of discomfort, you might have felt angry with me for bringing something up. You might have felt pissed off because I looked at you when I said something. Those are your gifts. Don't get wrapped up in that. That's a trigger, and a trigger is always the sign that's where I need to do the work. Always. We've got, out there in the crap coaching world, a trigger is something that we should run away from. I mean, please. My job when I do my pre-interview, I interview everybody before I work with them. My job is to trigger them. Let me see what's really there. Let me see how they're handling it. Because that's when the stuff comes up into my hands and I can work with it. And that's what it'll do for you. Remember though, judgment is your biggest enemy to healing. I shouldn't feel like this. Nobody else feels like this. Oh God, here we go again. Oh, this is scary. Let's have a glass of vodka. No, that's the shit that's going to hurt you. And we don't want that. Thank you very much for your time joining me on this wonderful Saturday, bank holiday weekend as well.
Thanks so much, Michelle. As always, amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Has anybody got any questions, anything that you'd like to talk about or that I can help you with? And hopefully you're going to go away now and do some of the work. You're going to do a bit of Zelli-vising. Anybody at all? Anything at all? You're all stunned into silence. I've got a habit of doing that.
Yeah, there's. I mean, you've said so much there. I think I need to just go away and digest that. But it was amazing, really amazing. I really appreciate you sharing your time with us.
Thank you. Thank you. I love to do live coaching. If anybody wants a freebie, come on. Anything at all you've got going on for you?
Me?
Go on, you.
You really, I mean, there was many times through that was in tears, but more towards the end from the statement that you said, if you're not present, you have no idea who you are. And you were really kind of talking about, for me, there's authenticity, like to yourself. I think for me, I've got a choice, as you know, to make whether I stay or go somewhere, to move to a new house, and it's not a definite yes. And in the beginning, when it first came, it was like yes, but I'm wondering if that was a yes because of what was going on for me in my environment. And now that it's settled a bit more, it's I'm kind of sitting with it again, and it's not a definite yes.
So what I would do if I was you is I would look at what's really important to you right now. I would, and that's what we call our values. So our values change constantly. Well, the more of this work you do, the more your values change. So I elicit my values every 6 months. What's important to me? And one of the things that COVID has done is that, for 2 years I've been working around the world and doing all sorts of things in media, and it's like I'm out of there. I don't need that anymore. So it's like, look at what this space has given you, Ashley, as what's important to you. What's important to me now is healing, connection, and furthering my work to make it even deeper and faster. What is your top 3 values at the moment?
It was community. When you asked me this question a few weeks ago, and it was if I can remember, it was something like, it was community, like conscious community. My freedom is always my highest value, but I have freedom here anyway. I can't remember what the third one is, but today I would say my highest values are, it's still conscious community, but I don't.
What does conscious community in itself is not a value.
Okay.
So and I'm sharing this because if you guys can learn how to elicit your values, really that's a golden nugget in itself. So Ashley, what does conscious community give you?
I like to bounce off people that I connect with.
So what we're talking about is connection.
Yeah.
Conscious connection.
Yeah.
Okay. And conscious connection, if you're bouncing, leads to creativity.
Yeah.
Okay. What does creativity give you?
Play and a meaning, deeper meaning in my life.
Okay. I'm going to go with expression.
Expression.
Does that resonate with you?
Yeah.
Okay. So those are your highest values. Now, it's going to be tempting because it's a house share. So it's going to give you the connection. Okay. I know that it will also facilitate creativity, although I believe that there is a
restriction
on your creativity. My intuition is there's something not right about this. Okay. That's my intuition. But if we stick with your values, it's going to dampen your ability to create, and creativity is your highest value. Now, it's actually going to be her third highest value because health and well-being is always going to be number one. And if it's not, it should be, because if you're not well, you can't do anything. Okay, but Ashley is healthy, and therefore, when we have fulfilled a value. So let's say that security and wealth is your highest value. By the way, it's very rarely money. It's either power or security. Once you've got that figure in the bank, that then goes to a lower value and something else comes to the top. So once you've actually fulfilled a value, it goes lower down. Does that make sense? So for Ashley, these are still very high for you. For the reasons that it feels as though it is not in line with your values.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
And that's how I make a decision with clients come to me, which they regularly do. So like, do I do A, B, C, D? And sometimes it goes through to Z. The easiest way, and we can do it so quickly, is you elicit your values. What's really important to you? At the moment, I'm packing on a load of weight. I've swollen up. I mean, I'm twice the size that I was pre-lockdown. I don't care. Now, I did care, but it's not in my value set right now. What's in my value set is emotional and spiritual ascension. I know that I am going to be called upon on the other side of this to do some pretty powerful work, and I need to be ready. And the fact that I'm packing an elephant's bottom really is not high on my values at all. I've got a job coming, and I need to be ready. Okay. Did that answer your question, my darling?
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Who else would like some advice or some coaching? Who's going to be brave? Yes, Anne.
Yes, you were incredible. Thank you so much. It's very good to see you on the other side of last week. So congratulations. I'm resisting. I'm resisting massively, and I've managed to. I think put myself in a place where I'm creating stories. I'm ruminating on things from the past. I'm just the ego is at play massively.
Oh, okay. So isn't it fantastic that you can spot that your ego is running the show? That's the first thing. So you can either live from spirit or ego. Okay. If you live from ego, you're in a dense 3-dimensional world. You are going to suffer. If you live from spirit, you're in 5th dimension, and that's when the magic, the miracles, and all of those things happen. Okay, ego is very much 3rd dimension.
Yep.
Now, ego doesn't want you to heal. It doesn't want you to grow. It likes the fact that it is the boss. It likes the fact that it can control you and bring you up and down and all around according to whim. One of the ways the ego will show itself, for instance, is when you start comparing yourself. The ego and the mind is quite lazy. It's brilliant, but it's lazy. So if you start to find you're comparing yourself, you're either trying to make yourself feel better or worse. That's the only reason you ever compare yourself, to feel better or worse. Both of those are ego. Okay, spirit doesn't give a shit what anybody's doing. It genuinely doesn't. Okay, you're in your own lane, put your blinkers on. So Miriam, one of the things that you do the work pretty religiously, and you're very aware. So one of the things that you can do is to start to make a list of your ego habits, patterns. How is your ego doing this? What specifically? So you've mentioned stories. So stories are where we put a meaning on something. So I'm breaking my heart for my birthday because my son was thoughtless and nobody loves me. Okay, that's actually not true. Can you see that what I would have missed had I gone down that route? Can everybody see that? If I'd have focused on my son's behavior, that would have been ego, because then I could have been righteous. Look at him, all I've done for him. Oh my God, how could he do this to me? That's pure ego. That's all you're turning into there is a victim. Okay? So what I want you to do is I want you to feel the feeling that you're feeling. Okay? And underneath the resistance, what's the main emotion?
So when you started this hour, I thought it was grief, and then you said grief is often rage and anger. But also I really identified with what you described around your inner child. So I think I need to do some inner child work, because I think what COVID is doing is definitely bringing the isolation, I guess, and see, I don't even know.
Okay, so do you see how you wanted to make a story and tell us?
Yeah, totally.
No. What's the emotion of isolation? Breathe.
I mean, I see, I can't even say I feel sad. I mean, I feel sad, I think, but I'm resisting that too.
I think it's loneliness. And I think it's the loneliness that you felt as a not belonging in your family system.
So as soon as you said loneliness, it just came here. Like I feel it here.
Okay. So if you track back to the first time that you have a memory of feeling that empty loneliness, not belonging, not connected, and you don't need to do that now, but that's where the work is, okay? Forget, and you can see already, look at Miriam's already having a physiological emotional response like that. Why? Because we just called the ego out. Just breathe, sweetheart. And this is gold. And if any of you are thinking, oh my God, this is terrible, this is the stuff that the gold is made of. And we're so conditioned to judge tears or anger or shame or fear as bad. Excuse me, can you just talk amongst yourself for 2 seconds?
It's the fact that Lily's making it look like she's this vicious beast. She's the biggest love bag that you could find.
Come on. My dog is now going, what is going on through this laptop? Come and say hello.
Sorry about that. One of the things I didn't mention about my birthday is that literally every day I'm just getting presents and parcels and amazing things. So coming back to you, Miriam, can you see how Miriam was stuck? She wasn't able to get there, and within a minute we're straight there. All we did was pull the veil of the ego. I called the ego out. You couldn't hide behind it. And it's not because I know Miriam does the work. So it's not that she wanted to hide behind it. It's that the ego had taken control. Okay? That's what's happening to you. And it won't look exactly the same as it does with Ashley or Miriam or me. Everybody's unique. But look at the speed that we're able to get there. And now Miriam now that you've connected, and as I say, and we can chat later if you want to off grid, but I'm absolutely convinced it's loneliness, disconnection, not belonging. And it's going to feel awful. Okay, allow your heart to break. And when you allow your heart to break, you'll find that there's a crack. And when that crack happens, the light's going to come in.
I don't doubt that.
Rumi knew a thing or two. And this isn't, I mean, I have felt more loved and lovable. And, you know, with my history, feeling lovable has been pretty impossible. You know, when I've seen therapists, and I've seen an awful lot of therapists, pretty much everyone has said to me, how come you're not shooting up heroin or, you know, homeless, living out of a box? And the truth is, I don't know. The truth is, I genuinely don't know. But what I do know is that I was put on this path at the age of 40 after a breakdown. And I certainly didn't do the work before that. I partied hard and I was quite successful in business, but I certainly wasn't consciously aware. And the deeper and the bigger your wound, the more wisdom you have when you heal it. And however deep and dastardly and ugly your wound is, it's where your greatest gift lies. And please don't leave this planet without healing it and being all you can be, because the world needs your wisdom. And you can't be wise if you don't heal. You know, it's an inspiration for other people too. Every time you step up, others around you, they might not like it, by the way, but others around you will be called to raise their game too. How are you doing over there, Miriam? It's okay. Anybody else fancy a little mini breakthrough? Yes. I'm sorry, I can't remember your name. Zoe. Zoe. Is that Zoe?
Hi. Yes, it is. Hi, thank you. So, as I say, you mentioned, talked about a lot that has really resonated with me. I think one thing that you touched on is about preparing our children. So there is undoubtedly going to be a seismic shift in the way that we live. And I think very, very early on, when we went into lockdown, I recognised that I had to parent differently. I didn't know how, but parent differently, and we've been feeling our way. So I just wondered, what should I be doing to help my children? I've got a 6-year-old and an 11-year-old. They're bearing up really well, not all the time. But what would you suggest I do to support them with all the changes that they're going to experience?
Adapt. Teach them that change is good. Teach them it's nothing to be scared of. So, you know, say we've got this ego-based belief that things have to stay the same, that we're going back to normal. Well, here's the news. Normal wasn't working. Normal was creating huge amounts of, well, the planet potentially wouldn't survive, but even if the planet did survive by some miracle, we are creating more sickness, mental, emotional, physical sickness in our culture now than has ever been known. And it is getting worse and worse and worse year on year. The stats are ridiculous. So in a way, what I would be doing is I would be talking about how wonderful it is that things are changing.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Yeah,
I really would. It's a gift. And you know, if you go online, you'll see that there's wonderful videos. In fact, Rachel's way ahead of me on this one, where you can go and you can do safaris. You can really engage them with the planet.
Yeah.
And show them what this is protecting, what this is doing, the opportunity we have here to change the world. The other thing I would do it is to 3 random acts of kindness a day.
Oh, I like that.
So that might be around the dining table, you know, when you have dinner, that everybody says, so whoever's to your left, you say 3 things about them you really admire and love.
I love that.
It's training the brain to look for the light.
Yeah, I really like that.
Because there's so many little things like that we can do to create or what I call a high vibe environment for our children. What I definitely wouldn't do is get too stuck on being rigid about homeschooling. I've got clients that have got 3 kids in 3 different rooms, 8 hours a day. I mean, unbelievable. But they're creating suffering. And I think that our children are going to remember this for the rest of our life. You know how your great-grandparents or your grandparents talked about the war? And, you know, it's a relevant, a reoccurring conversation. That's what's going to happen about the Great Awakening. You know? And they will always remember how they felt.
Yes.
They won't remember the minutiae about what they did, but they will always remember how it felt. And what I would do, I would just create a story around this being the most wonderful, positive thing. And sometimes you have to break a few eggs to make an omelette, don't you, Sasha?
Yeah.
That helped.
That was lovely. Thank you so much. My husband's just distracted me with a fish finger sandwich. No, that was incredibly helpful. I think I've just, you know, I'm trying to look at it all very positively, and this time together is very positive, but that's put a really, I mean, it's just the focus on the environment and the world and change. That's really, really helpful at this very tricky time. Thank you.
My pleasure. Sarah, you were going to say something just before Zoe, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was really resonating with a lot of what Miriam was saying, and I'm just wondering, so I'm in a situation where I've left a high-flying corporate career after 25 years. I left mid to January, so I know, look at the look of horror. And she's like, I've been encouraging her to do that for so long. Exactly. So I am free. And I am actually doing great during lockdown in terms of giving myself all the time I never had to rest and to do what I love.
Good.
I now have attracted, having had a terrible fear of being out of work forevermore, I've attracted a number of job offers. One of which is part-time, fun, makes me happy. One of which is almost a little bit of a dream role, but it's been delayed because of COVID, but will happen at some point in the future. And one which is here and now, and probably is a little bit like my former life, high-powered, you know, fuels my adrenaline junkie need. And I'm really struggling, although I've got a consciousness of it, of my ego pulling me towards the one that gives me status, that fuels my adrenaline, versus the one which is probably, you know, less profile. I'm just there in the, you know, but actually I think is the one that's going to make me happy.
Okay. Well, first of all, congratulations. I mean, I know what a role you had and, you know, how significant it was. And it takes a lot to jump that ship. And so congratulations. I think that you're spot on. You're already on it. The ego is trying to take you back to that. If you were going to stay in that kind of role, you would have been better to stay with your company, which was blue chip, which would have continued to reward you with shares and your 20-25 year service. I think that, and by the way, guys, this is such a wonderful opportunity to share with you. The universe, once you make a decision, once you set an intention, it always tests you. So if you say, right, I'm coming out of this kind of job, the universe is going to offer you a bigger and brighter and bolder same job, okay? And it's going to offer you some other choices. Are you going to operate from your heart? Or are you going to operate from ego? So one of the things you don't mention is the financial constrictions, and indeed, if there are any, is there any, and when I say need, I mean need, because what you might find is that if you're doing something that opens up your heart, you don't need the same lifestyle. A lot of us, and I include myself in this, I spent a lot of money making my life tolerable, in fact, making my life sexy because I worked so friggin' hard.
100%.
So,
Yeah. And one is lucrative and one isn't.
and I assume it's the high status that will be lucrative. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the other one will pay you something.
It will. Yes.
Okay. Look, I think that what the universe has shown you, number one, is that you've taken the jump, the leap, and the net has appeared, as it always does. You now have a choice of going back to who you used to be or moving into a new adventure, a new metamorphosis of who you are.
Yeah.
My intuition, there is no question where I think that you would be best placed. Now, you mentioned that one isn't around now, but it's your dream role. What needs to happen for that to manifest?
I am just actually nothing. I am just focusing that it is going to come, and I just have to be patient. And I am focusing on what I can do to make myself better prepared to take on that job when it appears. And that's some stuff that interests me from training. I'm just doing that in faith that it is going to show up at a time frame that works for everybody. I'm not even worried about when it is.
Okay. So the job, the other one, the middle one, which is a heart-centered role,
it's not my dream, but it's fun and it's nice, and it allows me to work 20 hours a week and have fun for the other 20.
Great. So in that case, what I would do is I would see if they will take, if you can make that happen for 6 months, for instance. I'm sure they would be over the moon. And my instinct says that you've got the cards in your hand here more than they have.
I have.
So in which case I would write your dream contract with them.
Okay.
And it might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, whatever it is that works for you. You could even put your cards on the table and say, look, I know this is going to bring me great joy, and my dream job is down the road, but it could be 12 months. You've got me for as long as it takes for that to happen. I'll give you a month's notice.
Yeah, and I think actually they'd be really okay with that.
That's what I would do. I wouldn't even consider going back to where you've come from. You look so well. You look so refreshed. You look so nourished. Your energy, when I saw you, you looked just so relaxed.
And I feel it, actually. I feel like my old self. And that's why I found it really, sort of observationally, weird that I was still having such a battle. And then I realized it's my ego. And it's what you said to Miriam around loneliness and a sense of belonging. I used to get that from my job. So yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
My pleasure. Anybody else? No? You're all cooked, are you? Rach, you got anything for me?
No, I don't think so.
Huh?
No.
Shall I go away now then?
It was super, super helpful, Zelli, as always.
Well, it's lovely to see your smiley faces and a few tears. I know that I've done my job. I hope that I've given you stuff to take away, to think about and to process. Remember, thinking stops you feeling. Try and get out of your head. Not off your head, out of your head. There's a difference. And thank you. There's some nice notes coming through there. And I look forward to seeing you, some of you for session, and some of you, perhaps I'll get invited back. You just never know.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was amazing.
Thanks, Michelle.
Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thanks.